So just a really quick background, who's this man coming here to talk about with you guys? From a dairy industry perspective, we've run a lot of groups for a long time. The first groups were 1952, based on an English garden tour. Somebody went to Arthur Ward, went over and saw an English garden tour with gardeners sharing ideas. Oh, farmers could do that. So 1952, we ran groups. At the moment, we've got a network of groups around the country. We've got 40 consulting officers. We run about 2,000 events a year, and it's all sorts of groups. It's specialised groups, it's community groups, communities of practice, communities of interest. So there's a range of service offerings that actually run with groups as such. So next slide, please, Ben. And I've tried to make this quite simplistic in some ways. Actually, we tend to have two main types of group. We can talk about groups of interest, groups of practice, but actually on one scale we have groups that have a fluid membership that you can jump on and jump off. And the other end of the situation, we have groups with restricted membership, which basically you have to tell your life story, show everything, and before you're actually allowed to join, and in between. But there tends to be those two extremes with a fluid membership and a restricted membership, and they tend to have different characteristics. So if we carry on with that sort of format in ahead, which we'll use later. Next slide, please, Dusty, Ben. So, and if we look at a lot of the literature, we tend to look at common ways to look at groups. We tend to look at, on the left there's the Tuckman's model, which almost everybody's seen, forming, storming, norming, performing, and joining. In the centre we have the sort of like the 4 seasons approach. We sow, we grow, we harvest, and we let to follow. It doesn't have to be a seasonal approach, but a group will go on a linear process. The first two are quite linear, which is a real challenge because things don't happen linear with people, which is a real challenge. One on the bottom, we often look at the audience. Audiences will change. We have the young guys or girls that actually are just knowledge focused. Feed me, the big funnel, just feed me as much as we're. And on the right hand side, we actually have the old girls and guys that actually I want to go to a group and actually give back. So you can actually have quite different audiences as such. And we've all seen that. And no doubt a lot of you actually go, yeah, my audiences are quite different, so how I attack it. One other way to look at groups is actually a bit like a relationship. And I stole this pride from somebody else from overseas. We go through the courting phase and we go into marriage, and we bring this beautiful group together. But like all relationships, that doesn't always end in marriage. Next slide there, please, Dusty. Sometimes we actually have a divorce. And I think that's important. You can look at linear, but actually we're dealing with people, and often the people in relationships in our groups can be divorced. Doesn't mean it's an angry divorce and we have restraining orders. Sometimes it's a conscious uncoupling that we do. And sometimes we've had people go, I enjoy this group, but I want to join this group as well. Can I be involved in 2 groups or 3 groups? It is one of those relationship factors we actually need to consider. Yes, we can look at linear, but some of the things we actually may consider as looking at it actually as a relationship factor within that group. Next slide, please. So, other things to consider. We can do the linear approach, we can do the audience, we can do the relationships, but the other factors we need to consider from a lifestyle point of view, I'm going to start on the right one, because everybody knows this, community. How strong is the community relationship and the personal relationships? And we've all been involved in those. I'm involved in this group because it's community-based. In the middle there, we've got the audience. Sometimes it's not just so much their life cycle, but actually their personal views. They're totally focused on their personal outcome. What's in it for me? They'll go, righto, I've got what I wanted, I'm going to leave this group. I've got what I wanted, so I'm going to leave. The last one on explore is patronage. And this is where your guys' role actually comes in, because a person leader can be a major determinant of actually how long the group lasts. What's the patronage that you bring into this group that actually is going to make it last? So how do you actually form that patronage within that group? So with that, you know, listen to me to spout on for too long. What we're going to ask you to do is we're going to put you in a breakout room, and we're going to ask you in groups of 4 to actually, what are the 5 to 7 things that builds your patronage as a facilitator? You know, because it is the often bit that gets often overlooked is actually your skill set actually can determine the life cycle. So what we're going to do in the breakout room is we're going to introduce yourselves. You're going to assign one person to facilitate. The easiest way, just pick on somebody and everybody point. So you haven't got the camera on, you're actually at a nil advantage because everybody can point and you can't point back. Assign one person to be the spokesman back. And what we like you to do is utilize Slack. So for your group, remember your group number and go for us. The 5 to 7 things that actually build patronage as a facilitator are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Group 1, we would like you to put those into Slack when it says breakout room ready to close in 1 minute. We would like you to put those in. We want to share your own experiences. It is a safe environment. So do use the chat. Say, get me out of here. There's 3 other people that I just do not like. So feel free to say, get out of here. But I'm sure you guys behave nicely. So we would like you to get into your breakout room and explore that patronage. You as a facilitator, what's the sort of, 5 to 7 things, bullet point them, that actually builds your patronage as a facilitator? Because I think it's often overlooked in the group life cycle. Oh, look, smiling faces. And great thing is around chat, we know when you actually see get me out of your group. So well done. So that's a good start. Look, for those who do utilize the Slack channels and write down your key points, what do you actually think actually makes patronage as a facilitator? So what I'm going to do, as a good CO, is probably Shane would say, I'm just going to pick on some groups. So my first group I'm going to pick on that's come up is, let's start not group 1 because that's boring. Let's start with group 6. Can you just say the spokesman for group 6, just quickly outline what are your key things that actually make patronage? So have a spokesman for group 6.
That was me, Simon. Wayne Allen.
Oh, Wayne, yeah, good to hear you, Wayne.
We had a number of things, and it was around the process that we could take as facilitators. Really, it was about being organised, ensuring that everyone gets a chance to have their say.
Yes.
It was about tying the discussion together and reviewing the direction of the discussion.
Yes.
And then it was about also reviewing successes and reminding the participants how far they've come and what they've achieved, and perhaps some attribution goes back to the group for some of that.
Okay, so you're doing all that transactional stuff and how the group's running, making sure it's a good environment and such. No, good stuff. Can you pick, Wayne, pick a number between 1 and 7, but not your own number?
4.
4, okay, spokesman for group 4.
I think that might be me. So we had quite a few different ones. That's Melissa. Hi, everyone. So we had the ability to listen and be relevant, to take ownership, but actually also be included as part of the group, so not just being the leader, to have people awareness, and to build trust within the group. Yes. To make sure that we allow social time for networking, so we're not just all about go, but we can relax, and to be collaborative, not competitive, and not be judgmental as well. So we're quite a few.
No, good stuff. Okay, Melissa, pick another number.
2.
2. Okay, last group. What haven't you heard that you need to add? Group number 2.
Group 2 was very off topic, introducing ourselves to each other, and we didn't quite get that far.
That's all right, that's all right. Pick another number, we'll go, oh no, I'll pick a number. Group 1, see how they got on. Anything else to add, group 1?
Shall I do this? So we talked about the frequency of communication with your group and how that communication happened, whether it was via phone, which was considered a bit more encouraging for people and building relationships than emails, although email and social media and texts and things also had a place. How willing you are to mix your groups up with other groups and things in the community, and also your general availability outside meeting times, and how long it takes you to get back to messages.
Okay, so Anna, you've just done, we're getting some of that relationship patronage.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? And I think one of the things that's good conversation, and because it actually, well, we want to run good groups and stuff, but some of the things that actually, it's more than just the transactional affair of the group, it's the relationship aspect that we actually got to do. Are we seen as a credible source of information? Are we seen as a trusted advisor? And a lot of you have done sales training, you will understand power gradients. So if you play golf, you won't get a golf lesson from Tiger Woods, you'll look up here because that's a power gradient. He's a really good golfer. Whereas if you want to ask him for relationships advice, you might go, well, the power gradient's down there. There's no way I'm asking Tiger Woods for relationship advice. So I think sometimes as facilitators, where do we sit on the power gradient? You know, do they look to us as trusted? Do they look to us as credible? But most important, do they look at you as a rock star that's going to have a really fun event? You know, one of the issues, actually, we often do this. I'll just put this up. We get everybody to do this. Is at events is actually map energy and time. You know, are your events boring as batshit, or actually does it fun and they keep coming back? And I mean that in a really nice way, because we actually all have secret TV shows. You go, it's really bad. I want to keep watching it, whether it's a Master Chef or Tattoo Two of Us, where it's some really crass TV. But if it's not fun, why do we actually, you know, why would we come back? And I think that's one of the patronage bits that actually we overtly sometimes forget. Is it boring or is it fun? Because we know the 3 sins of adult learning are righteousness. So if we get on the pulpit and lecture people, they will bow back. You know, we've seen this with farmers. You've got a technical expert comes in, he annoys them, and they argue back, even though he's right. You've got to argue back on principle. Wayne Allen, I've seen you do this. The other one we actually talk about, the other sin of adult learning is certainty. We know where it's going to end. Because of adults, it needs to breathe, and we need to actually encourage it. And the other sin of adult learning is seriousness. If it's too bloody boring, we're not going to turn up. We can have the best facilitation process, but if it's boring, we're not going to keep turning up. So I think that's probably one of the things around patronage. Actually, is it a fun event, good experience that actually makes them keep coming back? So look, that's just around patronage, and just something for you guys to explore on the fun meter. Was it fun or not? Because sometimes I think we forget that. We get very transactional in actually how we run groups. Righto, what am I going to do now is actually, we want you to actually put your lens on around the microscope. Actually, why do groups ebb and flow? So what we've got here is a few case studies. I'm really fortunate in my role. I get to go up and down groups all around the country. It's, you know, literally dozens and dozens every year. And some of these have been running a long time, some of them running a short time. So what I've brought is some case studies to go, why has this group behaved as it has, and what made it ebb and flow? So conscious it's 11 o'clock now. So we might actually give each group a case study to look at, and we'll come back and see what you've actually done. So can we have the slides back up, please, Ben or Dusty? Perfect. So what we're going to ask you to do, I'm going to show you 3 case studies, and we're going to get you to review this case study and put it under the microscope. So the first case study I've got here is it's a geographic discussion group. This group's been running for about 50 years. It's got a fluid membership, so people come in and drop off type stuff. It's an old established dairy area. It's close to a major metropolitan area, which actually has some impact, because we found, no doubt you said the same thing, if you've got groups close to a major metropolitan area, sometimes the community is not actually a strong pull because they're actually so integrated into the urban sector. this group was dying, and it was totally dying. You know, it was really struggling as such. So 18 months later, the group was thriving. So we're going to get you to have a look at this case study and ask why. Okay, righto, next case study. Okay, we've got a business discussion group. It's restricted. Totally you have to be, it was the leading farmers in the area. It's got about, it had 12 members, and the consulting officer picked the leading 12 leading farmers in the area. They had really close relationships, ran for 2 years, and the group was actually totally humming. These farmers said it's the best thing they've ever been involved with. There was full disclosure. They brought everything to the table, and they went around each other's farms and going, yeah, no, let's pull our business apart and actually add some real value. 18 months later, the group was cold. Like they said, nah, it's reached it, you know, it's cold, and why? Actually, a lot of farmers weren't happy it was cold. So I want you to explore why it may have been cold. And the last case study I've got here is a specialised discussion group. It's farmers are running the same system. So in the dairy industry, we have sort of low inputs, mid inputs, or high inputs. This was a high input group. It was restricted to based on your system. It was driven by farmers. We had about 30 odd farmers actually saying, yeah, we need to do this. And it had a huge first year. Like they actually had to turn people away. They had groups of 40, 50 people turning up. 18 months later, the group died completely. Why would some of these actually happen? So what we'd like you to do is actually, and these are all going to go on to Slack, these case studies, is actually, sorry, there's one more slide there, sorry, Dusty. Or Ben. What we'd like you to do is actually have a look at that case study, have a discussion, you know, what may have happened in that situation? You know, was it a Tuckman issue regards forming, norming, and storming? Was it a season issue that had reached its natural life cycle? Was it a marriage or divorce or a conscious uncoupling? Was it age and stage of audience? Was it the patronage of the facilitator? Was it the community? Was it the personal relationships? So what we'd like you to do is actually, we'll give you a case study, and we'd like you to have a discussion. What's actually happening here? Make some assumptions. What were the questions you asked? What were the things you consider? And we'll let you come back there. So just having to check with my tech guys, how many groups have we got for this next exercise?
4.
4 groups. So what we're going to get you to do is group 1 is going to do case study 1. Group 2 will do group number 2. Group 3 will do case study number 3. So that's nice and easy. And these are all on Slack, so you get to read them. And group 4, you can do paper, scissors, rock, and actually choose one. Okay, so we'd like you to get into a breakout room and have a good discussion about what's actually everything happened. Welcome back. There's been a whole lot of unanswered questions. You can go in that with a stupid exercise, Simon. Why you made us do that? I totally disagree with my other teammates. Or you might have actually worked well together.
Which is easier when I've got.
So we had 4 groups, 3 case studies, and group 4 had the real privilege of actually choosing their case study. So I hope you looked on Slack, because we had each of the case studies actually there that you could see on your phone. And also it actually had those things around under the microscope as well. So group 4, spokesperson. If you dob somebody in, if you haven't got a spokesperson, you know, what case study did you pick?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Lawrence Field here. We went with group 3, partly because most of us are involved with action groups, and we thought the idea of a specialist group was perhaps more similar to an action group.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you think? What do you think here happened? Because group 3 was just reiterating, specialised group, farmers, same system. It was a semi-restricted situation regards membership. It was huge the first year, then 18 months later, it basically, it died.
Yep. One of the things that we picked up on, and I think would be a challenge with such a big group, is, and this is something we are pretty hot on at the AWDT, is establishing the rules of the game at the beginning. You know, what's the culture of the group? So, you know, what's acceptable? How are we going to work together? And even in a situation like this, establishing, you know, what's the objectives of the group? Is it just about, you know, transferring knowledge and therefore it's got a limited life, so it's kind of transactional?
Yes.
Or are we here to support change, you know, and therefore we want it to carry on longer? One of our group who had worked with specialist groups said sometimes egos can get in the way. You know, it can get quite competitive. And we thought if they're high input farmers, they're probably high input individuals or high needs individuals. So there could have been some ego issues there, but that there would be the real potential to carry that on if you could be clear about what the objectives were.
No, cool. Yeah, so you're looking at some under the microscope stuff. We're looking at their relationships, outcomes and such, and some of those relationships. No, great stuff. Okay. Can we go to group number 3? Because you also had the same case study. What are you looking under the microscope? What else do you think might be happening here? Who's the spokesman for group 3?
I guess I'm the spokesman because I scribbled it all down. We wondered about the amount of pressure that they put themselves under to achieve, and possibly developed too fast, too much pressure, maybe didn't take time for fun along the way, not spreading the responsibility, resulting in a bit of burnout. But there's also the potential that the group had a very specific topic, very specific focus. So once that was achieved, their purpose was complete. And possibly just the intensity or a loss of focus. So people got what they wanted or didn't get what they wanted and fell apart there. That, and combined with the other group, probably ticks off all the things that we noted down.
Yeah, no, and good. And look, and all this exercise is actually, we're trying to get you to look at under the microscope. What are the plays that actually come apart? True story, what happened to this group? Facilitator left. He was a rock star. He drew people in, you know, that actually they were actually leading farmers, high input, went to him type stuff, okay? The second thing we found is we had all the ground rules, had all the focus and such, but actually it came a divorce. We had 2 types of farmers, ones that talked about profit and ones that actually wanted to show profit. Both used the same language, and actually one were going, this is a profit focused group, but actually one came into optimizing the cow. I see Lawrence laughing there. Which was in the first 18 months, everybody said they're on the same page, but it was like a relationship, all courting, everybody's nice and happy, but actually over time, the value sets of the group just actually merged. Plus, when the patronage of the CEO who was involved in, it just actually blew up. So there was actually a real highlight. Actually, don't underestimate your skills that actually from a life cycle actually you can bring together. No, great stuff, guys. Let's go back to case study number 1. This was a geographic discussion group that was fluid, that was dying, and then 18 months later, it was just booming. Okay, let's have a crack at this. Okay, group number 1, who's the spokesperson?
That will be me.
Thanks,
I'm the
Heather.
spokesperson because I took notes. As a group, first they discussed about what stood out for them, and the 2 things that stood out for the group first was that the group had been running for 50 years.
Yeah.
And the second that was clearly obvious to everyone in the group was that something had changed.
Yes.
So the group discussed about what that something might be, and they came up with a number of philosophies.
Yes.
So their thoughts were, there was new energy in the group.
Yes.
So was that a leadership change? Was it a new facilitator, or could that have been from group members? They wondered if it could have been that people were going because they'd always been, and then there was a new plan and the word spread and different people came in. Could it have been that new farmers are coming into the area who'd been in groups and brought in ideas about being in a group? Could it have been the next generation that had come into the group? Could it have been a big group getting smaller, therefore getting more agility? people wondered whether it was just something different, like more interesting speakers, which caused a change in what people were looking at. Could it have been that they went to the metropolitan area and had more fun activities like barbecues and eating meat?
Yeah.
That was a thought. And another thought was maybe they were just, I may not get this idea completely correct, about the casting the net wider. So instead of, because the metropolitan area was encroaching on the area, did they look further out, away from the city, and get different people who hadn't been part of the group before?
Okay. And I love the microscope. You actually go, what's changed it to create that energy? And actually, Heather, you're actually right. And one of the only thing that changed in this group is they had 5 new people come to the group. That actually was a generational change. There was 4 sons and a daughter that actually came new to the farming. They got in, they ramped it up, and actually, it's like the good party. Like, oh, this is really good. So they dragged their parents back along, and actually we had this group that actually was a bit ho-hum, to actually had intergenerational battles. You know, it's actually old versus new, and it actually was, it thrived, because actually the young guy said, Dad, Mum, why the hell you doing it like that? And, you know, and they had a contrast of ideas, and it just grew. You know, it was actually only 5 people took that group from about 7 people attending under sufferance to close to 40 within 18 months, because it became a good party, and it became that safe environment to have intergenerational ideas. So look, that's the thing in regards to fluid membership. It's amazing if you know, 5 people changed that group from kill it to actually it was a rock star. So it's amazing how quickly some new blood can actually change things around. No, great comments. And the last one, just conscious of time, was group 2. This was a business group that was booming. 18 months later, they culled it. Okay, group 2, who's the spokesperson?
Yeah, that's me, Simon. Phil here. Yeah, so yeah, we made a few assumptions, but we thought, you know, the obvious was there was personality clashes that just came out, and it may have been around a change of facilitator. You know, we did make the assumption that the group had got what they wanted, and thought, well, that's it. Now we can just move on. But we were just wondering about the a sort of a lack of facilitator engaging the group, and perhaps they there wasn't enough work done on perhaps the vision of what the group wanted, and they may have been sort of voiced that they were wanting to be there as a technical for technical answers, but actually what they were really wanting was a community of like-minded interests, so that maybe they fell apart because they weren't all clear on that, and so they lost momentum, and you know, that could have been from a change of facilitator, or it could have been that they got what they wanted.
No, thanks, Phil. And a good use of regards to what the facilitator was all mentioned in regards to the group purpose and such. This group they had 12 leading farmers. The group plan was to get down to all 12 farmers, pull apart the business, form action plans, and people would follow up at such with an end date. Got to the end date, half the farmers said, oh, this is the best thing, we want him to do it. The facilitator had got a lot of experience with these groups. This is about the 5th one he said, no, we're killing the group because you say you want it, but actually you're going to get bored really quickly. So if you can come back in a year's time and say, we want to resurrect it, he would. But he said, nah. And he said, after a year's time, nobody really said, oh, that was a good idea to actually kill that group when we did it, because it had reached its life cycle end. But actually, he said, the facilitator said, I've been in this situation before, is actually, let's keep it going, but it's not the whole pool, it's a smaller pool, and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah, so he actually made the call to reach the group end purpose, and actually, if they could give him a year's time hiatus, he was happy to then resurrect it. Interesting enough, farmers still loved the group, really worthwhile, but in a year's time, they didn't want to resurrect it because the critical mass had got so small. So good insights. So good stuff, guys. Look, we've all got ideas around this. So what we'd like you to do for the last exercise is actually, and we really struggle with this, you know, because we have emotional tie-ins to our groups. So what we'd like to do for the last exercise is actually, we'd like you to understand is when would you cull a group and how would you cull it? When you were to exit with grace, when you resurrect it, when you were to put it in hiatus, and when would you blow up and start afresh? Because often one of the challenges, we're not very good at actually killing stuff off. We know, or we'll just keep it going and going. Good, everybody's back. Nobody said chat, get me out of here, so that's good. That's good. I'm pleased about that. So what we'll do now, and this is going to be, and I know, Shiva's going to run out of time here. We are going to run out of time purposely because we actually want you to actually take this conversations and keep them going. And that's one of the reasons actually we're looking at using Slack long term to actually Shiva's how do we do some of these things. So look, good game's a fast game. Group 1, you had to when to cull and when to exit with grace. Have a spokesman back for that, please. Key points.
Okay, me again. The main discussion was about what it meant. Exit with grace, we felt, was a wind down.
Yes.
And we felt the facilitator's role was to get group consensus as to why it was working, not working.
Yeah.
We had a lot of discussion around cull because a cull suggests power, whether there be a power imbalance that individuals in the group can't agree, could be conflict causing a need to cull a group.
Yes.
Another suggestion was funding, where a funder makes a decision, choppy into the group. So we were more discussed about what the conflict and the power imbalance would mean in a cull situation rather than how we would cull.
Yeah, okay, that's good. And there's good comments here, actually, because one of the challenges actually exiting with grace and culling, it's a really hard thing to do because we actually get emotional. They become our children, let's be honest. They're part of the family, our groups and bits and pieces, but sometimes we have to do it, and it's actually to really get that clarity of communication, whether we're culling or exiting with grace. And I think that's the bit I've seen people being totally bargained. Oh, well, if we could keep it for another 2 weeks, oh yeah, we'd do that. Maybe we'd fit another 1 year, and actually they just needed to exit with grace and actually consider how they actually do it. So no, great stuff. Okay, let's go to group 2. They had to when to resuscitate, when to put in hiatus. Group 2, who's the spokesperson?
Yep, that's Megan Simon. So we mainly focused on resuscitation. None of us had put in any groups into hiatus, formally anyway. And so it really came back to going back to the objectives that have been set, the vision for the group. Is that still relevant? Are there still any unanswered questions that the group needs to work on? Really focus on the needs of the group. It's about what they want. What's the spark that's needed, and is it speakers or facilitators or
new members,
an extra couple of members, whatever.
Microscope. What are the things that actually I can bring into that's actually going to create that energy platform to resuscitate?
And then the point was made that an annual planning session can be a really good time to sort of draw the line, and you can put everything up in the air, including the facilitator can even step out of the room and they can decide, is this still the facilitator we want for our group, in a sort of safe-ish type of way anyway. And
it's a good comment, John, because one of the things actually also hiatus. It's a great word, hiatus. The farmers like, we'll put it in hiatus for a year, and it was a good thing because it actually naturally, we're not, keep connections, but then actually let it grow again, almost like almost like their life cycle was actually went to winter and needed to regrow again type stuff. So it actually hiatus was actually sometimes a positive thing for the group, not a negative as such. Okay, group 3, when to blow up. Sorry, Shona, I think you're muted.
Couldn't find my mouse, sorry. Okay, we thought that blow up was pretty destructive, so it would need to be something fairly significant, but
We came down to a few things that might result in the group blowing up. Conflict of interests, global decision that the group's just not working, a lack of energy, and a lack of commitment. And any of those things could disrupt it. But we did hope that the situation would be managed rather than just a spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, but I think it's fair. We're all very nice, but some things just have to blow up, and when we blow up, they can reform. So actually, having a blow up can reform new people, new energy type stuff. So it's actually, we need to blow this group. We need to start afresh and that can be inspiring for some people. It needs to happen, and some people can actually find new groups and such. So yeah, nothing wrong with a big blow up every now and again. Yeah, they're okay. Righto. And group 4, what was one of the things that you explored?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Again, it's probably been covered, but just that thing of checking in with the group. Yeah. And we said it's something as facilitators that we probably don't do enough. How did today go, and how are we going in general? You know, where's the group at? And it's having that a culture. It's like Kaizen, isn't it? Continuous improvement. Do we have a culture of reviewing what we're doing as we go? You know, continuous reviewing. And in terms of exiting with grace, we came up with the idea that it might be in this order. It might be that we invite Lindy talks about freeing up somebody's future, that we might invite a disruptive member of the group to exit with grace. And by bringing in, you know, somebody new with different energy, that could really change it up. We might suggest that ourselves as facilitator exit the group. You know, that maybe a change of facilitator gives it that new energy. And then the third one would be actually, exiting the whole group with grace. So, yeah, that was the main thing about just checking in, what's driving it, what's the vibe, and getting a sense, an honest sense of what is the buy-in, what's the kind of energy still for everybody to keep involved.
And it's a good point, Laura, because I think when you're talking about there, some of the checking in is actually the honest checking in. It's actually the patronage, actually relationships. Can people actually have the honest conversation with you? You know, you've actually got enough, power grinding, whatever you like to call it. The groups that I need to come and talk to you to discuss this. And I will often talk about actually, you know, when you made it, when somebody rings you up and said, look, I just want to run something by you, they're actually using you as a validation process. And that's a really trusted place to be when you get used as a validator rather than a technical expert. So, no.
Simon, I've seen this done really well on a governance level, at a board level. Peter Allen from Palmerston North does it, where if anybody's been to Toastmasters, they have a general evaluator. So what Peter does, no matter what size board he has, at the beginning of the board meeting, one person is appointed as the general evaluator. Now imagine if we did this in a group, so that every time you meet, somebody is there as a general evaluator, and at the end of the day, they just give a 5-minute quick evaluation of how the day's gone, you know, of the venue, of the facilitator, everything. That could be quite a good, quick way to check in as to how we're going.
Yeah. And what you talk about there is building a culture stuff. Like some very good languaging techniques we often use is actually I liked and I would have liked, because people can be really direct with I would have liked, but actually from a language point of view, it's actually easy to say I would have liked this to happen rather than the usual stuff. I like this, but however, it becomes a conflict situation. Using I would have liked becomes a very nice language phrase from that.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Righto. That brings us to the last slide. So what do we like to do? And it's been short and sharp, and it's just been thought-provoking. So what I'd like you to do is actually, you can write this down in Slack, we would like you to do. What's something that reaffirmed? A lot of you guys have got a lot of experience around this. What's like, yeah, that's right, I remember this, it's reaffirmed my thing. What has been an aha moment for you? Go, oh, shivers, I should have known that, and abruptly it's bringed up. And the last bit is actually, if you can't quite say it, is what to swipe. And I use this acronym SWIPE, which stands from Still with Integrity and Pride from Everywhere. Because adults, we want to, utilize their own stuff. So what I like you to do is have a quick chance in Slack to actually go, what's been something that's been reaffirmed? What's been an aha moment? And what is something you want to swipe that you can use tomorrow and go, cheers. And it might have been something really quickly in the conversations you had with people. That's a really good idea that actually Wayne had. Wayne doesn't come up with an idea, but I'm going to steal that one with pride because it was actually a really good idea. Because actually, so that brings us pretty much to time. So we could go back to gallery view, please, Ben and Dusty. So look, I won't, I was going to pick a few people out to share their ahas and reaffirm or swipe ideas, but we'll keep it in Slack because I'm conscious it's actually at 11:43. We're supposed to finish in about 2 minutes. So I'll hand it back over to Lab and Jeanette.
Okay, well, so thank you so much, Simon. We've really learned a lot, I think. So I'm sure everyone will agree with me that we've learned a lot about some of the nitty-gritty practical stuff about running groups and how to kind of cope with some of the dynamics, the inevitable dynamics that all groups have. So this whole series has started off at a very high level, and perhaps more theoretical, and it's come down to this workshop. It's fitted in perfectly in the flow, I believe, in that it's been very practical. And you did say you were wanting to provoke, and I think you've certainly done that. And there's obviously a lot more that we could talk about, and I think Simon said in one of the breaks that we could run another 4 workshops on this without any trouble at all. So really thank you for your time and effort, and for making us think. So Jeanette, have you got any last words before we move on?
No, thank you all. Thanks, Simon. Great interactive session. Really enjoyed it and picked up some good ideas.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Look, actually, we all learn stuff. We can steal with pride from everywhere. So look, and they are different. That's probably my biggest learning when I started running groups. Shane, Prof, remember this. We're running 100 groups a year type stuff. And often I've got transactional rather than thinking about where the group was in its life cycle.
Thank you so much. One of the things I'm going to steal is actually using people to report back from the gallery to keep. It's a great way to keep the group engaged, and I think that's something you've taught us that we haven't been doing. So we might try some of that in the future. So we've got a quick poll, guys, and then I'll just let you know, inform you about the next workshop coming up next week. So best done, Dusty and Ben, have you got a poll there for us?
It's all done, Lab. Yeah, everyone's already voted.
Oh, they've already done. Okay, for some reason I can't see the polls, but that's just a quirk of Zoom, isn't it? All right then. So just all we need to do is close. If you could stick up the slide for the next week, and I'll just introduce that, and then we can all go. Simon has offered to hang around. If people do want to hang around and chat afterwards, feel free, but also remember that we've got the Slack channel. We'd like you to put your thoughts into Slack and keep the communication going there. So next Monday, we've got Sarah Barr, who's going to take us through a journey on the wellbeing for the rural sector. Now, Sarah's worked with some of the rural trusts, with helping them set up wellbeing schemes. She's worked with farmer communities in real crisis, earthquakes and Mycoplasma bovis, etc. So I think it'll be a really good session. So that's Monday, 20th of July at 10:30 p.m. AM, should I say? We'll all be asleep by 10:30 perhaps. And so hopefully we'll see you there again. And thank you, Simon, finally.